10 years ago, I was a sophomore in high school, and I made a decision that really changed one aspect of my life. And if you can read the title of this video, you know that decision was to stop eating meat. I had honestly been considering vegetarianism for a really, really long time. I think the earliest instance that I remember, considering eating less meat was when I watched Braceface. It was a cartoon that I think was on Disney Channel. And the main character, if I recall correctly, was a vegetarian, or at least for like an episode, she tried it or something. And I remember thinking it was a really cool concept, and it also I was pretty young, so I was like, wait, meat is animals? I feel like everyone has that moment when you're like 8 years old and you're like, what? And then I just sort of forgot about it for a while. And then in 2010, my sophomore year of high school, I distinctly remember it was like the weekend before Thanksgiving that year. And some family friends came over. They were like college age to early 20s. And we watched this documentary called Food Inc. It was a really big deal back in 2010. It was this documentary kind of exposing different aspects of the food industry, including the meat industry and how terribly they treat their animals. I don't want to be one of those vegetarians who forces you to look at images that you would rather be blissfully unaware of. So if you want to skip the meat industry stuff, I have some timestamps to skip the more grotesque stuff. But basically this documentary showed, the inside of chicken farms and how cattle is treated. I really mostly just remember the chicken. I feel like maybe they showed some stuff about cows and stuff, but I definitely remember them showing just like chickens, like really, really close together, and how they pump them with all these things to make them more tasty to humans, but they actually make the chickens live like horrible, short, terrible lives. And I thought that was kind of messed up. And I remember Thanksgiving rolled around and I was like, I don't really want to eat that turkey. And then through the rest of December, I don't remember exactly, but I think I was just kind of considering vegetarianism. I was probably still eating the school lunches that had meat in them, and when my parents made dinner, if it had meat, I would eat it. But when 2011 hit, that's when I said, okay, it's my New Year's resolution to not eat meat for a whole year. And I did it for a year, and it wasn't too hard, so I kind of said, well, I don't really care to go back to eating meat, so I didn't. And here I am 10 years later, still kind of doing the same thing. Before we get too far into this video, I have a couple caveats about how my personal vegetarianism works. My motivation and reason for becoming a vegetarian is what I saw in Food Inc., and that is the horrible way that animals are treated on factory farms. That means that I actually am willing to eat meat sometimes if I know how it was raised, if I can look into the farm and see that they were ethically raised, lived a happy and relatively long life. If someone hunted a deer that was just living a regular deer life out in the woods, I'm okay with it. And because of this reason, I also will eat most fish, because according to the research I've done, fish farming isn't really very sustainable. So most of the fish that you can find in a regular grocery store even gets to swim around and live a regular fish life until it gets caught. My reasoning is not, oh, fish are too dumb and that's why I eat them. For me, it's more about the life that the animal gets to live. So I do eat meat once in a blue moon, and I guess in general I'm technically a pescatarian, but I like to tell people I'm a vegetarian because when I use the word pescatarian, I either get a reaction like this. So now there's a word for when you eat fish specifically. People want to put a label on everything these days. Or like this. Oh yeah, I think I went to a pescatarian church once. I am very funny. Not exaggerating. I think the first thing a lot of people want to know when they hear about someone doing a vegetarian diet is the pros and cons. So we're going to take a look at an article that I found that lists some of the benefits of a vegetarian diet, and then after that we're going to talk about some of the challenges that I faced. Okay, so like I said, we're going to take a look at this list that I found online of some of the claimed reasons that you should go vegetarian, and I'm going to tell you guys which ones are actually true for me and which ones are either not that noticeable or totally false. We'll see. Okay, the first reason that they list is you'll ward off disease. So according to this, being a vegetarian reduces your heart disease, your risk of cancer, lots of things that are mostly related to cardiovascular and cholesterol sort of things. Right off the bat, this is one that hasn't manifested very much in my life because I'm 25. I know that people can have heart problems at this age or even younger, but that kind of stuff doesn't really run in my family, thank goodness. So I haven't really noticed. I guess at my age, some people experience heartburn, and for me, that doesn't really happen. Maybe if I eat like Flamin' Hot Cheetos or Taco Bell like right before bed, I might have some heartburn, but that's the only like heart kind of issue that I've had. So not necessarily false, but definitely not just like, woo, shockingly true. I'm 80 and I have no heart problems, you know, like I just can't, you know, insufficient data. You'll keep your weight down. Okay, a lot of people claim that when you switch to a vegetarian diet, you lose weight. And this was definitely true for me. When I stopped eating meat, I was in high school and I lost about 10 pounds. However, I kept growing and my body got used to I didn't keep growing, I stayed 5 feet tall. But you know, like the weight that I did initially lose came back as, you know, I got a little bit older and also as my body got used to the vegetarian diet. So I don't think that this is a great point. As with any diet, you might lose weight at first, but you're very, very likely to gain it back. The next one I can actually speak to, and that is you'll reduce your risk of foodborne illnesses. I definitely agree with this. My husband is always having to worry about, oh, don't use that spoon, it touched the meat, and oh my goodness, I put that plate on it touched the this and that every time we're cooking. And when I just cook for myself, it's like I don't have to think about it at all. I mean, unless I'm using eggs, I really don't have to think about, you know, the bacteria that comes with a lot of animal products. You'll have more energy. I definitely feel like this is true. This is just something from, you know, observations, but I definitely do feel like I'm a generally energetic person, but I'm not like an athlete, you know. I definitely know people who are more energetic than me because that's just the kind of person they are. But I mean, I work out every morning, so I do a little bit of physical activity. I love to go hiking and, you know, all that physical outdoorsy stuff, but also just like in my everyday life, I'm normally the kind of person who, when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I'm awake. You know what I mean? And that is so not true when I was in high school. However, I probably just wasn't getting enough sleep in high school. Again, it's hard to say if this is related to just growing up or if it has to do with being a vegetarian. But as I've gotten older, I have definitely become not necessarily a morning person, but like whether I'm getting up at 9 a.m. or if I have to get up at 5 a.m. for like something ridiculously early, like once I'm awake, I'm awake. I'm really not one of those people who's just like, I don't want to be here. It's early and morning and blah. So like throughout the day, I'm generally pretty energetic, but maybe that's just who I am as a person, you know? You'll be more regular. Yes, I'm not going to give you any more details. Just eat things with fiber. You'll help reduce pollution. I think that later in the video, I'm planning on talking about this, the environmental impact of the meat industry. So I won't go into too much detail about this now, but yes, definitely true. You'll help to reduce famine. This one's also kind of like the pollution one. Like it's just kind of another side effect of vegetarianism, or maybe for some people it is a big factor, a big motivator for vegetarianism. It just depends on the person. But yeah, this makes a good point about how we grow so much stuff to feed the meat that we're going to eat when we could just be eating the grain that we feed to the meat and just be using way fewer resources and feeding more people. You'll spare animals. Obviously, I've talked about how this is my main reason, is that I don't like the way that animals are treated. So of course, that's a big benefit for me. You'll save money. This is something else that I'm going to talk about later in the video. Some people say that vegetarianism is expensive. Some people say that it's cheaper. Honestly, it probably balances out, especially if you're buying a lot of like really fancy, expensive meat substitutes. However, this does make a good point. Meat is quite expensive. So by cutting it out, theoretically, you could be saving a lot of money. Their last reason is that going vegetarian is a breeze. Again, I think that really depends on the person. For me, yes, I do agree that for me personally, going vegetarian was pretty easy. I've never been a picky eater, so it was more of just kind of like a fun challenge to see what I will eat if I cut out meat. I have the money to buy like meat substitutes if I want them, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's easy for me. It might not be easy for everyone. So in general, I think that, you know, people make a lot of claims about going vegetarian, especially like the health benefits. And a lot of these benefits are things that, you know, maybe I'll see in like 50 years, but they're not really making a big difference on me right now. So yeah, clearly there are a lot of potential benefits, but like I said, it can depend on a lot of factors. But even though I've reaped many benefits from the vegetarian diet, there are some drawbacks as well. A lot of people worry about health concerns. Are you getting enough protein? These sorts of things. And I have never had any negative effects, at least in my body, since I started a vegetarian diet. I don't feel like there have been a lot of changes since back when I ate meat. I mean, obviously I was 15 back then, but I think that my health and my body have changed in a normal way between the ages of 15 and 25. I really don't have to actively make sure that I'm eating protein because I've never been a picky eater. I love peanut butter, I love beans, I love all the vegetables that come with protein, naturally supplied in them, like broccoli and all your leafy greens are packed with protein. So I don't feel like I've had any negative side effects in terms of protein. I do have to go out of my way to get some vitamin B12. What I normally do is every now and then when I'm in the store, I see Powerade and I go, oh, haven't had Powerade in a while. And I remember that they're fortified with vitamin B12 that is synthesized. So whenever I see a Powerade and it's on my mind, maybe like once a month, I'll be like, oh, Powerade, probably could use some of that. I think the biggest challenge with vegetarianism is the sort of social challenges and awkwardness. I feel like this have gone away as I got older, and maybe some of it has to do with being in the South where people eat a lot of like barbecue and meat all the time, whereas in a slightly bigger city in the North, there's a lot more options. Maybe it has to do with the fact that vegetarian options are becoming the norm all over America, or maybe it just has to do with I don't come on as strong as I did when I first became a vegetarian. But for whatever reason, the social awkwardness around not eating meat, it has diminished in the past 10 years. At first it was a lot more negative. People sort of like making fun of me, acting like it was weird, just high school stuff. But even adults would act like I'm some bleeding heart liberal kid for not eating meat. And it's like, okay, calm down, I'm 16, just let me eat what I want. Now, normally the worst social stuff that I face is, people feeling obligated to really go out of their way to make some sort of fancy vegetarian meal for me, or, oh, we want to go to a restaurant. Oh my goodness, we have to find a vegetarian restaurant for Becca. And it's like, okay, it's fine, guys. We can go to Cracker Barrel or whatever, and I'll just eat a veggie platter. Like, it's fine. So that's something that I've had to get over a little bit, like trying not to feel like I'm just like a burden. People talk about temptation, like the temptation to go back to eating meat. People say that, bacon is like the gateway meat because it smells so strong and it's amazing and everyone just wants bacon. But this one hasn't been a huge drawback for me. I will say it's a little hard because I'm married to a meat eater and sometimes he'll have, some steak or something and I'm like, oh man, that looks and smells really good. But I think this goes back to kind of a phrase that people say a lot, oh, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle sort of thing. And that's what I have to tell myself. If my husband's gonna throw away his leftover steak and he's like, this is gonna go in the trash, do you want any? I'm like, why wouldn't I eat something that's just gonna go in the landfill otherwise? You know what I mean? So like, if I eat something that's gonna get thrown away otherwise, I am not like, well, call the vegan police, I'm not a vegetarian anymore. It's fine, because to me, whether or not I'm a vegetarian doesn't have to do with, did I accidentally order some turnip greens that were flavored with bacon? It's more about my belief system. So while we're on the topic of being tempted to eat meat, let's talk a little bit about some of the hidden animal products that people don't realize are in a lot of foods that seem to be vegetarian at first. Gelatin. Do you like marshmallows, candy corn, and jelly beans? Too bad. You can't eat them anymore. Gelatin is made with collagen. I think they normally get it from like horses or cows, and it's in a lot of the delicious sweet candies. It's a real bummer because I love s'mores, and now my idea of s'mores is just graham crackers with chocolate, and that's it. And that's not as fun. Luckily, there are still lots of gummy candies that are made with ingredients other than gelatin. I don't know how they get that gummy texture without using gelatin, but they do. I've checked the ingredients. I love Sour Patch Kids, Mike and Ike's, even some brands of candy corn and jelly beans don't contain gelatin. Just don't get Brock's. Sorry, Brock's. Stop using gelatin and I won't roast you. Wish I could roast a marshmallow. Rennet. This is one that's really gross whether you eat meat or not. It's a product that you can find in several cheeses. Rennet is something that comes from the stomach lining of calves. I don't really know how it works. I don't know why it's important to the cheese making process, but just Some cheeses you have to watch out. I normally just, when I need to buy a cheese for a recipe, I look up beforehand, does this cheese contain rennet? Because even though I personally allow myself to eat dairy products, I'm not gonna eat something that you had to kill a baby cow for to get its stomach lining. I mean, that just sounds gross to everyone, right? Luckily, if you aren't vegan, you can easily just find other cheeses that are fairly similar to Parmesan or whatever cheese you need that don't contain rennet. And of course, if you're a vegan, just continue to use your Daya, I don't know how to pronounce it. Animal flavorings like beef broth, chicken stock, pork byproducts, that sort of stuff. You could be getting a flavor of potato chip that sounds really innocent, like pizza flavored or something, but maybe they want to get that sausage or pepperoni flavor in there, so even though you're like, pizza, that's just cheese and sauce. For a lot of people, pizza automatically means pepperoni. So sometimes pizza flavored chips will have pork byproducts or something in them. This isn't always true. I know there are lots of vegetarian and even vegan barbecue flavored things, pizza flavored things. There will definitely be things that have literal pictures of meat on the bag, but if you read the ingredients, there's no meat. So just what I'm saying is read the ingredients. Okay, to be more positive, I also want to talk about some game changers, some things that maybe I didn't know about when I first stopped eating meat, but over time, as I have learned to cook a little bit more and acquired my own taste, there are some things that I've discovered that I like a lot, I get excited to eat them, and of course, they're completely vegetarian. Starting with my most recent discovery, which is chickpeas. I know everyone knows about chickpeas. I mean, like, these days, everyone eats hummus. Like, it's not a revolutionary thing. But what I discovered is that chickpeas don't have to be expensive. Hummus does not have to be expensive. You go to the store and you buy this little container of hummus for like $3 or $4. Don't do it anymore. Go buy dried chickpeas, even if you have to go to like an ethnic food store, you know, like I got these from our Indian market, but I don't think I had to. I think most grocery stores will have dried chickpeas. Or even if your grocery store doesn't have dried chickpeas, I bet you can get canned ones. But like, y'all, $6. This has like 30 servings in it for $6. That's amazing. This bad boy can fit so many servings. I make my own hummus now and it's so easy. It's literally just, once you have the chickpeas all soaked, or if you buy canned chickpeas, it's even easier. You just stick all the ingredients in a blender. It takes 20 minutes tops. Also, roasted chickpeas are so good with some like taco seasoning on there, with some like onions and peppers. So good. I also want to give a shout out to meatless crumbles. I have no brand preference here. I just go for whatever happens to be cheapest at whatever store I'm at. These in particular are Gardein. I don't know. Why are all the vegetarian and vegan things so hard to pronounce? These are great for many reasons. Obviously they're great because they're vegetarian, and I think most of them are vegan too. But the other thing that I love about these is that they're already crumbled up because it's not real meat. You don't have to get it cooking and then crumble it up yourself, or I don't really know how ground beef works, but like it comes in crumbles. Does that make sense? Whenever my husband makes things, he has to thaw the meat and then cook the meat and then add the meat to the thing that he's cooking. With this, it's so easy. I make taco soup, I just add this with all the other ingredients. I don't have to cook it separately because it's not like I'm gonna get salmonella from it. It's so easy, way fewer steps than meat. Like, I'm just saying, like, meat eaters, don't pass this up, like, for real. And yeah, it is kind of pricey, but that's why I like to space it out. It comes with like a pound of meat in it, which I think is what most recipes call for, is a pound of meat. But I normally use half or maybe even just a quarter, so that way I can kind of space it out over time. And again, like, I mean, $3 or $4, that's about how much a pound of regular meat costs, right? I don't know. But it doesn't feel like it's that much more expensive than just getting meat. I could be wrong. And the last thing I want to talk about is bacon bits. Vegetarians are seriously sleeping on bacon bits. I don't know how so few people know that bacon bits are vegan. They're literally entirely vegan. As long as you get the kind that says imitation bacon bits, right? Don't get the one that says, I don't know, like real bacon or whatever. First of all, real bacon's gonna go bad way faster. This stuff lasts forever. And honestly, if you add this to like soup, or I put it on top of like vegetables, if I make canned or frozen like corn and carrots and peas and stuff, I'll put some like butter, salt and pepper, and bacon bits. And it absorbs the stuff and it makes it like soggy, like you flavored it with like ham or bacon. Like, even though they're crunchy, and I love them crunchy, like on top of a salad too, but if you put them in stuff that has like a soupiness to it, it's gonna soak up the liquid, and it actually has kind of a bacony texture. Like, open your eyes, wake up, America. Imitation bacon bits. So 10 years is a long time, and I definitely made some mistakes when I first cut out meat. Luckily, I think I've learned a lot since 2010. I think the most important thing that I've learned is that you don't have to play into the annoying, jerky, vegetarian, vegan stereotypes that you see everywhere. When I was 16, I guess I don't know why I thought this way. I just had this idea in my head of what a vegan was or what a vegetarian was, and I was like, if I eat this way, I have to act this way.
And change your entire menu to be vegan from now on.
And I think it was also being fueled by the people who were teasing me for what I was choosing to eat. I felt like I had to respond by teasing them back for eating a certain way, and that's messed up. Don't do that. I think by the time I graduated high school, I was like, oh, that was really stupid. Why was I like that? Especially if you're in high school, like people are dealing with like body image issues, eating disorders, like that is really common at that age, and you don't know what someone's going through. So whether you eat meat or don't laugh at someone for the way that they eat. Don't try to make someone feel guilty for eating a certain way. Just let people eat what they want to eat. And yeah, just don't be a jerk. Something else that I really didn't realize, well, I guess I kind of realized, but I think I've changed my perspective on it, is the sort of like elitism, classism that comes with vegetarianism. I feel like a lot of people don't realize how like wealthy you kind of have to be to really follow at least what is shown, what is portrayed as like the ideal vegetarian diet. You know, meat and dairy substitutes are like really expensive. And when I was in high school, I didn't have a job, I couldn't pay for my own lunch, so I basically packed my lunch with whatever my family already had in the pantry. So every day for lunch, I would eat a peanut butter sandwich, and I would make some of that like suddenly pasta stuff, and I would make that last like 3 days. So a sandwich with a side of suddenly pasta, or maybe chips instead of pasta. And that was my lunch every day for like 3 years of high school. And I thought that was fine. I didn't really care because I got to come home and eat a tasty dinner that my parents prepared for me. I, you know, had breakfast in the morning. So I was eating decently. I felt like I was getting my protein from peanut butter. And honestly, when you're a teenager, you can eat trash and your body will bounce back. So when I first heard that criticism that vegetarianism is for the wealthy, I was like, oh, that's dumb. But now that I'm a little bit older, I like to eat kind of a more varied diet. I realize that, you know, someone shouldn't have to give up eating enjoyable food to be a vegetarian. So I think it's kind of lame to really force someone into eating the food that they can afford, even if it sucks, just because, you know, they have to be a vegetarian. You know, so many vegetarian influencers these days say, you know, you have to have like the meatless crumbles and the almond milk and whatever. And those things are expensive. It irritates me when people act like everyone can just become a vegetarian. There are a lot of dietary reasons, there are monetary reasons, and that's something that I have definitely opened my eyes to in the past 10 years. I guess this sort of ties into my next point, which I didn't mean to do, but I put, you don't have to eat meat substitutes or even vegetables. You should still eat vegetables, but the story that I just gave about eating peanut butter sandwiches and pasta every day, people would tell me, oh, you're a vegetarian? You must really like vegetables. And I would be like, I guess I do, but I kind of just eat peanut butter every day. You know, people act like if you're a vegetarian, you eat salad all the time, and it's like, okay, salad is only one food group. Just because meat eaters only eat meat and like potatoes doesn't mean that vegetarians only eat vegetables. Like, we still need fruit, we still need carbs. Yeah, and you don't have to just eat meat substitutes. I love to have them every now and then. In fact, I just discovered that tofu is actually pretty cheap. So if you happen, I know tofu's not for everyone, but if you like it, it's cheap. So that's kind of cool. But like, as nice as meat substitutes are, right, you don't have to go out and have the Burger King Impossible Whopper for every meal. That thing's expensive. You can just make spaghetti and then in your sauce just put peppers and onions and mushrooms. Like, that's still a really filling meal. It just doesn't have meat in it. There are things that I think even meat eaters are eating that they don't realize are vegan or vegetarian. One of my favorite restaurants was Taco Bell. They got rid of like half their vegetarian options and now I'm kind of salty with them. But I would eat Taco Bell like at least once a week in college because they have so much vegetarian stuff. Taco Bell is great. I mean, stuff that people don't even realize is vegetarian is on there, you know, like the potato soft taco, the 7-layer burrito. I'm listing lots of things that they got rid of, but the point is, a lot of the time there's vegetarian stuff out there that you don't even realize is vegetarian. You don't have to spend a crap ton of money on meat substitutes. And the last thing that I learned also kind of segues from this point. I don't know how I keep doing that, but I learned that you can alter like seriously any recipe to be vegetarian. I feel like a lot of vegetarians, myself included, back when I first started really trying to make an attempt to cook, we sort of have this idea that we have to look out for vegetarian blah recipes. You know, I want to learn how to make vegetarian burgers, vegetarian spaghetti, and it's like, okay, why don't I just find the recipes that I like, and if it has meat in it, think about what I could replace that meat with. I'm like, oh man, but this recipe has meat in it. And it's like, well, oh wait, I can still make it. I'll just replace the meat with like mushrooms or meatless crumbles if I do want to use like a meat substitute, or, you know, depending on what the flavor of the dish is, right? Sometimes I'll use mushrooms, sometimes I'll use like black beans, chickpeas, whatever. And the same thing with vegan recipes. A lot of people see vegan recipes and they're like, ew, that's vegan. I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. Maybe this is blasphemy, but I've definitely taken vegan recipes before. And when they say soy milk, I'm like, well, I don't want to go buy a whole thing of soy milk that I know I'm not going to use the rest of. So I'll just use the regular milk. You know what I mean? You can adapt recipes that are for meat eaters. You can adapt recipes that are for vegans. I mean, this is true for anyone, right? A meat eater could use a vegan recipe and put whatever meat they want to add to it. It's not like you have to read recipes that are targeted at your meat consumption demographic. And that has opened up so many options for me in terms of different recipes, and yeah, it's great. I love cooking now, and I think COVID has helped with that. I've just been home so much and had way more time for cooking, but I've discovered so many recipes that I like this year. Mess around with recipes. Don't be afraid to experiment in the kitchen. One more thing that I learned that I didn't put in my notes, but it just now occurred to me, is another reason that I now have a new motivation for continuing my vegetarianism, and that is the environmental impact. At first, I was really focused on more the animal rights side of things, and I still am. I still think that, you know, it's important for us to treat animals with decent respect and let them live a decent life before we eat them. But I also now know that the water consumption for raising animals, the land use, the emissions from transporting the food to the animals and the meat to the market, and it's just, there is a really huge environmental impact of all the meat that we eat as a culture. So that's a new reason that I have for continuing my vegetarianism. That's the last thing that I learned that I could think of. Overall, I'm very happy to have been doing the vegetarianism thing for this long. Again, I know I said I had some caveats. I eat fish every now and then. I will eat meat if it's free range, or if my husband has some steak that he's gonna throw away otherwise, you know. But whether or not you think that minor meat consumption is a deal breaker, I am happy to have significantly reduced my meat consumption. I'm not gonna say that everyone needs to be a vegetarian. Like I said, I know there are lots of reasons that it just doesn't work for some people. But I do think that in general, we could all stand to eat a little less meat, or at least learn about where it's coming from. I'd be interested to know what you guys think about vegetarianism, veganism. If you are doing some sort of plant-based diet, I would love to hear what your motivations for it are, any things that you've learned, any tips that you have, all that sort of stuff. And if you're like, nah man, I want to eat meat for the rest of my life, like, I would be interested to hear if it's just because you really like meat, or if it's more complex than that. And I mean, even if it is just, I really like meat, like, no judgment. Part of the reason that I'm not full vegan is because I really like cheese. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because we put videos out every other Friday about music, media, linguistics, and whatever else is on my mind that week. Thanks so much for watching. See ya.